All right. Great morning. Happy Wednesday. So
Hey, happy
super
Wednesday.
excited. How you doing, Emil?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Wonderful. So good to see you. It's been a minute
Yes. Yes. It's a pleasure.
virtually. And it's so wonderful to have you. So I want to welcome everyone to today's Utopia Talk. This is our third Utopia Talk for 2023. How about that? Three and three. So yeah. So welcome everybody that's joining. We're really excited about today's call. So we're going to be talking about mindful goal setting. And so I think it's very fitting as we are in the first month of 2023. A lot of people start the first couple of days literally with resolutions, and I don't believe in resolutions. Hi, Maria. So wonderful to see you. Yes, let us know if you're here. Throw it in the chat. Where are you joining us from? We appreciate all the love and engagement. And this is a Utopia Talk, so it's a conversation. And today's topic is mindful goal setting and OKRs.
Mm.
So, for those of you that are new to OKRs, what are OKRs, Emil?
So, in a nutshell, I would say that the OKR's definition, objectives, and key results.
Yes.
So, to break it down a little bit further, I would say that when you consider what the Harvard Business Review said about OKRs, they mentioned that the objectives and key results are for the team, whereas you have goals are more like for the individuals. But let's break it down a little bit more about the OKRs. The objectives, this is your what. Like, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? Where do you see the organization or yourself in the near future, right? Long term or even short term. But then the
Yeah.
key results, that's your how. So how are you going to do this? How
Yes.
are you going to meet those objectives?
Right.
And if you just break that down even further, like really, really simplify it, don't forget that the key results have to be measurable. So we're talking about quantifiable actions with some measurable outcomes. So in a
Yeah.
nutshell, that's what OKRs are, which is a
Okay.
little bit different than goals, right?
You ready
Yeah,
to dive in? Yeah,
I'm,
I'm
I'm,
ready
I'm
to
diving
dive
in because
in.
the thing is, you
we
know,
we gonna dive in. We gonna dive in deeper.
yeah. When we think about these goals, goals are flexible. I
Right.
I can have a different goal every single day, or I can even reshape that goal. We call them malleable. So
Right.
if you think about the flexibility of goals, we talk about them being on like solo projects or autonomous work for your professional development, and they could be in support of the key results, but they're simply just not key results because they cascade. So again, let's
Hmm.
go back to the objectives. This is something that's overarching, something
Right.
more organizational. And then we
Right.
cascade down to the key results. This is where each team can now participate in achieving that objective.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you to pause right there because we're going to
Yes.
unpack this even further and dive even deeper. I wanted to just share a few things before we fully dive in. And I appreciate you giving such a great setup because a lot of people don't know what OKR. You have a lot of the business world that does, and you have a lot of people that don't. And we should all have objectives in our lives. We should all have desired outcomes,
Mhm.
right? But they're not going to just happen. We have to create some
Absolutely.
intentionality, and that's where those key results get kind of come in there that we're going to unpack a little bit more. I just wanted to share a few things for those that are joining us for the very first time. I don't know if we fully introduced ourselves. So I'm Naya Powell, founder and CEO of Utopia Global Wellness. We have a lot of new things in terms of our objectives and our key results. And so when I think about our objectives, an objective is something for a company that should be audacious and inspiring. So for Utopia Global Wellness, our mission is our objective to revolutionize self care so the world and the workplace can show up as their best selves. And then that best selves, so the world and the workplace can show up as their best selves, is the why, right? Because we really want to bring wellness to the world. And then we have a lot of different ways in terms of our strategy and goals that we execute to get there. But I want to share a few things that we have new for 2023 going on with Utopia GW. One is we're really excited about our partnership with United Healthcare going live
Mhm.
as of January 13th. So if you are a United Healthcare plan holder, you now have a part of your insurance plan access to our platform, our live classes weekly, our on-demand library of diverse wellness from mindfulness, yoga, Pilates, cultural movement, and even access to a licensed therapist that does bi-weekly sessions. And she's a licensed mental health therapist providing emotional and mental wellness coaching as well as life coaching. So all of this is the regular programming that we offer. We've just recently launched our group coaching practice where we can actually work with your organization around such topics as mindful goal setting, OKRs, stress management, resilience, and all of these wonderful things, one-on-one coaching. And next month, we're announcing new global leaders and classes on our platform. So just wanted to get a little bit of that out the way. And also, Emiel, just to share a little bit with the folks, a little bit more of your full, I won't say full role because I feel like we are holistic beings and we have a lot of different titles. It's not the sum total of who we are, but one of your professional titles is Senior Director of Performance and Organizational Development. So I would love for you to first tell us where you're joining us from, and then what kind of led you to this world of leadership development, because this is how you and I met in the consulting space and having the privilege of working together. And I've always had such respect and admiration for your leadership and just how you present and connect with companies and clients. So what led you to this space, and where are you joining us from?
Oh, I appreciate that. And also, thank you so much for the invite. So much appreciated.
Yeah.
And I'm really ready to dive in and talk a lot more about, you know how we talk.
Yes.
But so I'm in Memphis, Tennessee,
Mhm.
and getting into the world of leadership and professional development, it was never a big passion of mine when I was much younger. So I spent 21 years in the Navy. And during that time, I spent about the first 10 years in the logistics space. Uh, I would argue that, matter of fact, I think people would also argue that I was not that good at it. And it's not that I didn't have the ability to be good at it. It just didn't appease me, for a
Mhm.
better term. Right? I wasn't drawn to it. It was nothing exciting. I
Yeah.
wasn't. I didn't get up in the morning thinking, "Wow, I can't wait to figure out what gets to point A and point B." It just wasn't my thing. Now there
Right.
are others that do that work, and I truly appreciate that they care for it as
Mm.
much as they do, because it just wasn't for me. But
Yeah.
then I discovered a space in professional development where people were tend to seek me out for guidance.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I made a lot of mistakes in my younger years. I was giving advice.
Okay.
I
Okay.
abruptly stopped giving advice when I noticed that I was also responsible for the result of the advice that I
Mm.
gave.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
didn't coach them through to hold on to their responsibility and their actions. So I
Yes.
found myself always trying to rework and rework. I was like, this is a lot of work
That's
and
a lot of work.
energy. It is. It is. I just could not do it any longer. So I remembered one of my good friends saying, "Hey, never let the first time you do something be the first time you do something." So I
Mhm.
realized that I had to practice the craft that I wanted to get into, and I
Mhm.
practiced more coaching because
Mhm.
that's the area that I wanted to spend my time and my energy that I gifted to others. But when I was in the Navy, I sailed on quite a few ships. But I would say as time goes on, I realized, even after retirement, that there were two ships that stood true and what I still sail on today. And this is what I use in every engagement with people that I meet, and it's relationships and partnerships. I
Mhm. Mhm.
lean into relationships with my being because I know that no one of us exists independent of another.
That's right.
And the same thing with partnerships. And
Right.
we're not independent. And I
Mhm.
don't want to be independent. I want to
Right.
ensure that you know that I'm here as one of your support.
I love that because, and I think I just want to expound upon that.
Yeah,
And you said, I don't want to be independent. We are made for
right.
community. And
Absolutely.
so, and that is such a key topic. And I think that how the world brought us together in the world, in a way, in the corporate space, is to really help some of the biggest companies in the world to elevate their culture. So
Yes.
you and I both did a lot of amazing work with Korn Ferry, working with
Yeah.
top companies all around the nation, in tech and otherwise, finance and otherwise, because companies are looking for ways that they can elevate their culture and sense of community
Yeah.
so they don't have just a company where people are clocking in for a paycheck, because that is not going to give you a company that's thriving and make you a global innovator and leader. It's going to be a mission-driven organization where people can get behind the purpose of your organization and want to lean in to being a part of seeing that happen. And so that is something that when you said, I don't want to be independent, no, we want to be a part of something bigger that's impacting the community in our world. And that's what business should be driving forward, not just the dollar. And people are kind of checked out with just the dollars. They'll keep moving from place to place and space to space, which takes us to the OKRs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Simon Sinek said something one time on a podcast. He said that leadership isn't a solo sport.
Mm-mm.
And to expound on that, I would say that life isn't a solo sport.
No, it's not.
None of this is up to us, singularly up to us. Now, there are things that we can do independent of others or with a little more autonomy, but
Mhm.
then we come back to the greater good, and that includes other people. And
Mhm.
that's what the OKR process is all about. This
Mhm.
objective is not your singular objective. It
Mhm.
may be the organization or even the greater team's objective, but the
Right.
key results, how you achieve that, you're going to see different departments. So, for example, if I say, as a sales team, I want to drive revenue. I want to increase revenue 400% over the next 6 months.
Mhm.
That cascades down to not just the sales team, but the marketing team, the production team, the customer service team,
Mhm.
and they each
Mhm.
now are responsible for different key results on how to get there. Now, where
Mhm.
you get to your goals is when it gets down to the individual contributor. Say,
Right.
now, how are you going to make those, 10 to 15 phone calls to ensure that we're meeting the action that's going to take to get to those key results?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go for it, please.
No, absolutely. And I was just going to say, to make it super simple for people, in terms of like layman's terms, right? Your objectives are your what? Your what? What are you trying to achieve? What is the mission? What is the desired outcome? So it's the what, right? And the when we think about the key results, that's really the how.
Yes,
How are we going to get there, right?
absolutely.
But that needs to be driven by the why, the purpose. And so think about what is the why, because that's going to drive it all. And I'll break it down. I was talking to one of my advisors the other day, and he said, one of my intentions for the new year is to be healthier. He
Mm,
said, I'm in my 40s, just hit my 40s. I'm a father and I'm a husband, and I need to be healthy so I can run around with my kids, so I can be present, and I need to be here for them.
yeah,
So for my family and not just run myself into ground for work. So when we think about these OKRs, they apply to companies, teams, and individuals. And
yeah,
so I love that because we can think about what is our company's why, and it could be to transform innovation. It could be to bring healing and wellness to the world. That's the why,
right.
right? And then when we break that down a little bit more, we have to say, well, the goals, which we want to be smart, is the key results. Like you said, how are we going to get there?
Right.
And we look at the KPIs, but you don't just get to KPIs, key performance indicators. You have to have those things broken down. So when we talk about mindful goal setting, the two really go together because you can't get anywhere without being intentional. You can get somewhere, but it might not be where you intended.
This is fair. When you were saying that a moment ago, the first thing that popped in my mind was, at the beginning of the year, so many people go out and do vision boards,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And I'm not against vision boards. I don't personally do them. I don't have any space on my wall to hang them, or I
Yeah.
don't want to put
You
them.
got the amazing art up in your
That's
house.
right. Yeah. But I see people do the vision, but now I'm wondering, when you finish the vision board, then do you implement the OKR process to
Mhm,
achieve that? Right?
mhm,
Because if we're starting with the vision, like I have this vision to achieve these things, okay, so
mhm,
now what's the objective of that?
mhm.
And then what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to do this? Because
Yeah.
I want people to truly, truly, like you mentioned, be intentional about where we want to go.
Yeah. I
Right?
love when you said that because I do have vision boards. And so I didn't do one this year because I already have three. And the vision and between the three of them, the vision has evolved. I've checked some things off, but I
Right.
didn't feel the need to do another one because my most recent one is still reflective of the vision and objectives for my life. And I actually have professional, personal, spiritual,
Yeah.
physical, all of the different areas of our lives represented on my vision board. But when you said it, one of the things that I love to look at on my vision board is the pictures that embody global wellness and
Yeah.
global retreats. And when I think about our global retreats, the ability for people to get away so they can go up, so they can really invest in themselves and their well-being while enriching themselves. I would say the why is so we can elevate, escape,
Mm,
enrich, and cultural immersion and empower.
yeah.
So this is a lot of times leadership focus. Our next one is in Bali. So when I think about, you said, do people go back and figure out like, okay, how am I going to make this happen?
Right.
So when I think about that, I know for me, it is selecting a tour partner, somebody that
Mhm.
I can trust with our group, and we can curate an
Yeah.
amazing experience. I know that it's going to have to require programming, deadlines, communication about the who, what, when, where, and getting this marketing lift out to the broader world and community about what we're doing. And then it's going to take a lot of planning along the way and timeline. So another thing about OKRs is you want them to be somewhat limited for the organization so it's not overwhelming. So it creates a level of focus, right? You also
Yes.
want to know that the OKRs, in terms of like just some of the benefits of the OKRs, is that it's going to create focus. It also helps to create alignment because everybody knows what we're doing. It's also important to have those check ins so you can make sure not only is everybody committed, once they have the focus, they can truly commit. But if you don't have clear expectations, how are you going to truly commit? And like you said,
Right.
you have the vision board, and sometimes in the office it's the whiteboard, but then it's
Absolutely.
the strategy. How are we getting there, right? So we
Absolutely.
want to make sure that we're tracking and we're checking in to see how are we tracking. Ideally weekly in your weekly team meetings, right? Or monthly meetings, but we also want to have a stretch. So if the goal is that, what did you say? We want to meet sales targets of, I
You
don't
know,
know what you said,
yeah, $400,000 over the next 6 months.
$400,000, then
Yeah.
how are we doing? We need to look at this quarterly. What are we going to do each quarter to get there, right? So when
Right.
you think about it, I see a comment in the chat from Maria: alignment towards the goal, a North Star. Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So when you have helped organizations with their OKRs, Emiel, what have been some of the, I would say, highlights? What have been some of the resistance or the barriers for organizations? Anything that you can share around how organizations can kind of start with getting moving in this direction with their OKRs.
Yeah, I would say I don't face a lot of resistance, and I often begin with a story about what my mom used to tell me when I was younger. And I was one of those kids that would run around the store and touch everything. Right, I couldn't keep my hands off stuff. And before we go to the store, she would sit me down, and she would get really close to my face and say, "You better act right." And over the years, I'm trying to figure out, like, what are you even talking about? Like, when she says act right, what does that look like? Like, what do you mean act right? So as I begin on this leadership journey, I'm thinking like, okay, so if I was to act right and break that down, my A was always going to be alignment. I
Yeah,
had to be aligned with my mama. I mean, I
yeah,
just had to. Like,
right,
she was the one that's taking care of me and caring for me. So I had
right,
to make sure that I was aligned. In your
right.
organizations, are you aligned with the organization's mission and vision? Is that
Mhm,
something that rests with you that you agree with?
mhm,
The other thing that I had to remember was communication.
mhm,
So my C was I had to communicate with my mom, like, hey, mom, I'm going over here. I'll be in
mhm,
this space. Is that okay? So in the
mhm.
organization, are you communicating across departments or interdepartmentally to ensure that you're on the same track or you're looking at the same things?
Right?
And the
Absolutely.
last thing that I had to remember was I had to trust her that she had my best interest at heart, and she had to trust me that I had her best interest at heart. Right? Like
Right.
this was reciprocal. In the
Mhm,
organization, people have to trust in your
mhm,
they have to trust that you're looking out for the best interest of the organization and not your personal interests.
right. How do you
And with
oh,
okay, go for it.
I was gonna ask you, what are some of the things that organizations can do to build trust?
Hmm. Clarity. I
Mhm,
would say, begin with the end in mind, right?
mhm,
The organization can begin with clarity, be
mhm,
really clear on their intentions and
mhm,
on their vision, and stick with that. And if
mhm,
something changes, clearly communicate that something has changed. So there
mhm,
has to be a commitment from the organization, and the objective has to be around the organization doing better, not your personal feelings. Now, I'm not saying suspend your feelings because we all have them, lean into our emotions, but if we're feeling a way because of one of our ideas, remember the commitment is to the organization, not to just the individual.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Communication has to be open and it has to be timely. So make sure that we're communicating at the right time. So
Right.
everything doesn't have to be said at that moment when you feel it. Is it the right time
Mhm.
to express what you're thinking or you're feeling? Or do you need more time to process it to ensure you have all the information?
And
Because,
I,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was just going to add to that. I did a training within the Utopia team yesterday on cultivating an inclusive environment. And so when
Yeah.
we talk about this world of mindful inclusion,
Mm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you talked about communication
Yeah.
and being able to share and receive, I think that's so important. And so
Right.
creating space for that. So making sure that our quarterly updates, our monthly meetings, our weekly meetings, that we're creating space for people to
Right.
share how they're doing,
Yeah.
what successes. So we want to make sure that we're recognizing, rewarding, but also what are the roadblocks and the challenges that might be preventing us from getting to our goals. And you and I have done a lot of executive coaching. And one of the things that would come up a lot when we would be doing 360 assessments that I saw is sometimes the peers and team maybe didn't always have a clear vision, a
Right.
clear goal of where the
Right.
team needed to be or how it aligned with the broader company's key objectives. And I think that that communication part is huge. And if you're having the right, and a lot of times it does require some coaching, group
Yeah.
coaching, facilitation to help teams get there, which is something that we offer. But it does require that to make sure that we're on track. So that's also a benefit of making sure that you're having like meetings around quarterly goals. And I just want to share a couple of benefits of actually having those quarterly goal sessions and OKR check-ins. It's keeping the company agile because sometimes we're doing stuff because we had this grandiose goal, but guess what? The key results, the KPIs that we set in place, it's just not working. So we have to revisit and we have to be agile, and that's going to come with the communication that you talked about.
Absolutely.
It also fast tracks recognition because people work harder for recognition than they do actually money, studies show. So
Mhm.
it allows us to really cultivate that culture
Yeah.
of acknowledgement. It also makes for better managers because you're in tune with what's happening. And it even works in specialized cases. So if you have some really nuanced stretch assignments and things like
Mhm.
that, these are things that can apply to any area. So I just wanted to call those things out. So we're getting down to the wire, and you're on a roll. So is there anything else that you would like to share in terms of how a person might want to just kind of start with their own framework for their own team or their own self, in terms of their OKRs?
Absolutely. Yeah, when you were talking just before I go on,
Hmm.
what you mentioned there was a good cadence that you've put in place with your team, which allows them to know that there's some sort of rhythm or time and schedules that's necessary to achieve what you need to achieve. Now, I use the word rhythm because there's times where we get out of sync, we get off beat. But if
Hmm.
there's a cadence in place, you're able to get back on beat because the beat is often pretty similar.
Right.
That leads more to your credibility and the team's credibility, and that we know that there's something that's expected of us. So then we show up because we know what those expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing: we get in our own way, though. One of the best ways to get started is to step aside, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we often will block ourselves because we start having self doubt that starts creeping in. But what our approach can be is once I step out of my own way, I start with the why. What makes this important to me? Why is this
Right.
really important? And
Right.
then we can then make it matter. So I understand why the organization needs this, but what role do I play and why does that matter?
Hmm.
The other
Hmm.
thing that I like to say, and I'll turn it back over to you, is I would argue that if we can suspend best practices and lean into effective learning, more of like guiding
Hmm.
principles,
Wow.
things will change. So we think about people say like, oh, these are our best practices, right? But those rooted in the past. That's something that we did before. But if we're looking to get further, we have to have a future facing mind. So, what's effective about some of those practices that can withstand the test of time? I still go back to look, we no longer sail on wooden ships. Someone had a vision to change that.
Wait, just say that again. So I'm putting it in the chat. Suspend best practices and lean into what was
Effective
that?
learning. Effective
Effective
learning.
learning. All right.
Yeah. We often we go to like, what are the best practices? Like, well, that was 2005.
Mm,
Is that still relevant today?
mm.
Things have changed. Times have changed.
Yeah.
So
And we
are we
want to be always
shifting?
evolving, right?
Right, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Some of the best companies, they look at a complete rebrand every 2 years
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
and I don't even know at 2 years, I think with the speed of technology and innovation, I think 2 years is even too long. I love
Definitely.
that. I love
Definitely.
that.
Definitely.
It makes me also think, Emil, of a couple of things. It makes me think about coming from a background of global talent acquisition myself and
Mhm.
knew here, sometimes companies still do talk about culture fit. You don't want culture
Mhm.
fit because it's the same as that's what we were doing. You want culture
Yeah.
add. You want everything to be additive. You want everything to be elevating. So you
Right.
don't want it to necessarily have to fit into exactly the way it is and it has been because where's the space for creating new
Right.
diversity,
It's scary though, right? It
value?
can
It
be.
is. It is. It
Yeah.
can be scary, but it's also how we grow, how we
Absolutely.
evolve, how we stay relevant.
But it's scary because it's a space that we have little control over.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
there's spaces that we change all the time. I mean, think about the fashion industry. They have new fashions every single year. Oh, that was 2006. No one wears that anymore. That was so last year. Oh, that's so passe. Like, come on. But in our lives, in our professional lives, we're like, well, hold up now. Let's hold on to this. We've always pushed the same button for the last
Yeah,
10 years. Why do you want to do something different?
yeah. And when you said that, we've all seen those people that are stuck, right, in the
Right.
fashion time warp, and we're
Oh,
like,
someone's still wearing a Steve Harvey suit. I guarantee it.
"Oh,
Someone's
yeah.
still doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah." And it really stands out. You're like, "Okay, where have you been? What's going on?"
That's right.
So
Yes,
so
yes.
it's the same thing, right? We have to make light of
Absolutely.
this stuff. That's why we have such great conversations because we could like pivot and detour, but make it real, like and make it plain. And
Right.
when you were talking, it made me think about, bringing some of my personal objectives into 2023,
Yeah.
to live a life that's healthier, to add in more harmony as a founder, as a CEO, as just most professionals. We work a lot. And so, how to make sure that my well being is in balance and harmony. So, that's the desired outcome, living a
Absolutely.
life that I love, right? Holistically. And in order for me to get there, I had to make some decisions rooted in some smart goals,
Yes.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timeline. And I had a session with my coach because good coaches have coaching yesterday. And
Absolutely.
we checked in. And since the new year, I want to proudly share that I have joined a fitness center. So, in addition to doing our Utopia platform classes at least 3 times a week, I want to I'm a people person. So I'm
Yes.
motivated by being around others and taking, group classes and
Mhm.
things of that nature. But I've also started a very clean diet, a modified Daniel fast. So in 8 days, I've lost 5 pounds. That'll never happen for me. So, it's like tangible things. I actually have a nutritionist with Nava. You all hear me talk about Nava all the time. So it's like I have put in some really key performance indicators to see how I'm tracking and I'm seeing results. And so these apply to, your marketing strategy. If
Mm.
the KPI is to boost
Yeah.
engagement by
Yeah.
50%. By when? Is it by the end of the quarter? And how are you tracking that? And how are you going to get there? What sort of things are you going to do? Are you going to boost your SEO? Are you going to increase your spend? Are you going to post additional content? Are you going to do live engagements? So it's like we want to make sure that we are breaking down not only the objective and the desired outcome, but exactly how are we going to get there and how are we checking in? And is everybody bought into that vision? Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I just want to give people a chance to do a quick coaching exercise. I'll just give you 1 minute. If you are able to just grab a pen or you can type it on your computer. I like grabbing a pen because we get distracted. We get on our computer. Whatever works. Go ahead and write down for yourself, your team, or your organization, what is one of your objectives?
Mm.
What is one of your objectives? That's the what. What do you want to accomplish and achieve this quarter or this year? Okay. keeping it super simple. And it should be inspiring. It should be audacious. Now I want you to write down the how. Maybe just 1 to 3 things. What are 1 to 3 ways you can get there with your team or organization? It can be a couple of words. It doesn't have to be super detailed because you can always come back to that. And the why. What's the purpose? What's the reason? And a lot of times, honestly, we should start with the why. What is the why? The why is the most important. So I want to invite you all to build on that. Okay. Continue to talk about it with your teams. A lot of times, like you said, we don't need to be independent. That's not why we're a part of an organization. That's not why we're a part of a community or a family or groups. So let's allow the power of collective thought to drive innovation. And let's make these brainstorming sessions. These are some of the things we do in our group coaching sessions. And I'll put information in the chat about that. But I want to just kind of open it up for Ask Us Anything. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Lois, hi. She liked that, Emiel. Suspend best practices and lean into effective learning. Lois and I worked together years ago. So good to see you.
Awesome. I appreciate
Any questions? All right. So I will get ready to close us with a moment of mindfulness. If you have any takeaways, feel free to put them in the chat. And we're just going to take a moment to close our eyes if you like, or you can just lower your gaze. We're going to take a moment to just be fully present. We often don't get an opportunity to do this. You can place one hand on your heart, one hand on your abdomen, and take in a nice cleansing breath. The art and the practice of mindfulness simply means to be present. Slowly exhaling. And again, taking in a cleansing breath. Slowly exhaling, releasing the self-doubt, the critique, maybe the overanalyzation, and breathing in your why. What is your why? What is your purpose? How do you want to elevate your organization, your team, or your life in 2023? What is the vision? Visualize yourself, your organization, your team, winning, operating in the fullness, in the manifestation of seeing these objectives realized. What does that look like? And maybe think of one step, one thing that you can do to start the process. Setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into the visible. I want to thank you all for joining us today. This was amazing, Emiel. I really appreciate you being here with us. I hope I didn't lull you to sleep that fast.
No, I was good. Thank you so much for this. I truly appreciate, one, the invitation, but two, to continue this conversation with you. So thank you.
Yes, we'd love to have you back sometime soon. And so I want to say again, thank you. We are so grateful that you all joined our third Utopia talk on mindful goal setting and OKRs. And if you are interested in scheduling a discovery call so you can learn more about how we can work with you in terms of group coaching, one-on-one coaching, or our wellness programs, just visit us at utopiasgw.com. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Be well, everyone.
Be well. Make it a Utopia living day.
That's right.